What time is it?
It's
Hey. More like Sabaody.
oh my god.
I didn't have a planned follow-up. Hi, everybody. Should we get into it?
Which punch was more satisfying?
Oh my
This
God.
punch or the punch of Bellamy's face?
Like, the Bellamy punch is great, but come on, right?
It was this punch.
We come to despise Saint Charlos more than should be physically possible for the human body to contain. Oda manages to create the most detestable human being as quickly as possible.
I hated him so much. I didn't actually have words. So it was the most crazy thing. So I just wanted to start off with a little kind of like thing that I noticed before about Amazon.
Because I thought this was neat, and I haven't been able to go find the chapter you're talking about to double check.
I went back and looked, and it is Amazon.
Yeah, okay, this is so rad, because I've never heard anyone talk about Amazon from Skypiea, old DMV lady, that she's one of the people applying to be Iceberg's new secretary. So go into this.
So if you guys go and look.
Okay, it was in a cover story, apparently.
It was. So in the cover story, there is a thing of Amazon, and she is applying for the position as Iceberg's secretary. We were talking about some of the things that could mean. Number one, it would mean that we know that Skypiea has changed now. People would no longer be needing to pay exorbitant rates in order to get up into Skypiea. Maybe we're making access easier, trying to become more attached to the world beneath, and Vars could come. And then we started to think about some of the things that it could mean, especially if he chose her as his receptionist, because he is making Water 7.
Well, can I, before you go into that, can I go into the fact that I briefly said, oh yeah, they want verse and things like dials are really valuable, so they could build a train. And I went, wait, you couldn't build a train because Skypiea moves. And then we both had this next realization.
Yeah. We were both like, well, yeah, but if you're making Water 7 float, then you absolutely could.
Exactly. If Water 7 was a boat floating around like Iceberg planned to evade the Agua Laguna, you could really easily have it anchored to Skypiea with a train between them. And no one is more familiar with people coming in and out of Skypiea than Amazon, the person applying for a job at Iceberg's mayoral estate. Isn't that so cool to think about?
It would be so amazing. So I was
so this was something,
man, that would completely change. And if anyone is going to be able to build some kind of vehicle to do trade back and forth, it would be Iceberg. He would be the one. She's applicant 154.
So there's a chance we're wrong about this. That sucks, because I think this is very cool.
I don't know, I was just looking at her. It's a hard call. I think she looks like Amazon.
Yeah, there's no wings there, Memo was saying, but they could be hidden.
Oh, if you're talking about the wings, she's mostly hidden behind bodies, and you're only seeing that one outside edge. That's why I said, like, it is definitely done in a way that it wouldn't be like, boom, Amazon.
Someone's saying Amazon has 2 buns, and applicant 154 only has 1. So there's a chance we're wrong.
No, I absolutely agree. I looked at that part already, but I was like, does she have to have the same hairstyle every goddamn time?
Yeah, I mean, people usually do, but there is a chance.
They're the exact same face, exact same body.
This is not our first mermaid. Kami is our second mermaid. Kami? Is it Kami? I thought it was Kami.
It's Kami.
It's Kami.
Yeah. No, guys, don't knock down Our First Mermaid.
We had Lady Kokoro before this. Our first
honestly,
mermaid who can't walk.
They did Lady Kokoro dirty as in this thing, making fun of her and talking about how she's so gross and da-da-da-da-da right in here. And I was like, are you kidding me? The lady saved your life. That lady
like 3 times
went through the badass freaking water, ripping through that tunnel and pulled you out. She saved your ass. Give Lady Kokoro the love that she earned. Justice for Lady Kokoro. Yes, thank you, Japson Art.
Someone wants to know how you feel about the Sanji bounty payoff with our good boy Duval.
I gotta say, I freaking love Duval. Wait, I just want to take a second because we see the Sunny and they celebrate, and I didn't know how much I was going to need this celebration. And in retrospect, I wish I'd spent a few more moments reading those pages and being freaking happy about all the cheersing and the welcoming him to the crew officially. Because, yeah, my bad. I didn't know we were going to do another rip my heart out. I wish I'd taken a second, but I loved the way that he showed the circular rainbow. And then in the SBS, they talked about circular rainbows and how they're a real thing and da 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 da. And then how they showed the sea snake currents. Just adding these little panels every once in a while needs to be talked about because he takes a bunch of different, not only scientific things, but also well-known narrative arcs and just makes like a single panel out of them and then moves on as if nothing happened. And I think that's wild. I just think that's an absolutely next level, god tier level thing to do. I loved the beginning of this. I loved heading into the red line, hitting another frickin' mountain. I was like, we're supposed to sail up again? And I should have known we wouldn't, because then that's when Oda was like, oh.
Do you think I only got one trick?
The song goes, ain't no mountain high enough, ain't no river ocean deep enough. And that's what they do.
Let me add in, we also find out in this arc why this part of the red line you probably shouldn't try to go above, because we find out what and who is up there.
This stupid government.
Yeah, the heads of the stupid government.
The heads of the stupid government, who more and more every day, I would just like to say, they don't even need an evil force there. They're just so shit all on their own. Like, I understand that they are being influenced, and I still think they're under the dark influence of things, but I think a lot of them just like sucking. That's my theory.
I genuinely believe that Oda has a very Marxist writing about class, where oftentimes it is not an intrinsic bad evilness to people in power, but that there is a political pressure and a circumstance allotted to people in positions of authority that allows them and encourages them to be shitty. And I think you definitely see that with the Celestial Dragons.
Yeah, I would agree. But I think that there's some other dark force involved. So I was telling you that in my opinion, and I like that I don't listen to anything and I just do what I want.
Yeah.
Let's not go in the order of the story. I really think that for a long time, I'm only have been seeing it as Chinese and Japanese lore because I know a lot about Western lore. And so for me, I've been focusing on one direction, and that's mostly in Chinese and Japanese lore while I'm learning it. And I think now I am going to start layering back Western lore. And I think that he's going to use a more traditional god of the underworld. And the reason I'm thinking that is when you and I were talking about Pluton and how Pluton is like seen in that way already, I'm like, yeah, I gotta bring in some Roman gods and some Roman things. But I do think there's like an actual evil underworld force at play here, and that it's for sure influencing the government. Who and what does it look like?
That could be Hades, that could be Satan, that could be hell from Norse mythology. There's a lot of different...
I am going to just do a minor pass by on the things I know well, and then I'm going to dive into the stuff that I don't know as well and see what he's pulling on and what interests him. I love that Kami comes up. We get introduced to our second mermaid, humans, and she's lovely. And then we get to find out that the best way for them to go is to go under. But holy doodle, could anything be cooler coming up to this dude who's so upset and despises Sanji with all his damn heart, and then to find out that he's sharing the same face in the atrocious face that shall not be named. I just cannot tell you how much joy I got out of seeing his ugly drawn face exist on another human being. I was like, that is brilliant.
Especially because when you see a character with a mask, you have this buildup of it's going to be someone with like features we recognize to indicate that they're like a relative. Like people were expecting, like I heard, I've looked back on forum posts of this era and seen people be like, oh, they're probably going to have swirly eyebrows, or they're going to have green hair, or be like, this is going to be a character we know. Like some people were actually saying it's probably secretly Kuina and things like that. And then the reveal is, it's just a guy who looks like Sanji's shitty drawn bounty poster.
Comedy genius. And in his defense, if you think about it, if that's your face and suddenly people are out and about trying to find you and your whole world is ruined, you would be pretty pissed off and you'd be like, screw you, Sanji, life-ruining bastard. So I was good with the whole thing. I was also so happy when he rearranged his face with the great kicks and basically gave him plastic surgery gold. And turned him into a beauty queen. Because dude looks beautiful now. He's so pretty.
Look, Duval was a mafia boy before it happened, but he was not worth nearly as much money as Sanji and was not capable of defending a bounty of that caliber.
Who could ever be? I ain't even a pirate. I don't even know the guy. Yes, and the other good thing about it is when Sanji was like, if you didn't like the look on the wanted poster, you could have changed your hair, grown out a beard or something. And the look on his face when he just sits there like, and he's like, you never even thought of that? Because you're complete idiot. Yes. So good. Did you just call me handsome? No, I didn't.
God, he's so funny. Duval has one of the best bits. It's such a good joke.
When we finished that fight, I didn't understand, that basically all we were setting up here is the ability to have somebody come and help them out later and to have that comedy gold. As soon as I saw Hachi, I was like, yes. Because I told this to you, I never know if I'm having conversations with just you or if we did them live. I think that when we go into the cover stories, a lot of times we have that the most awesome thing about it is that we find out people who are going to come back to the story, but we also find the stories of people that Luffy and the Straw Hats left behind. And in those cover stories, we get to see how they start to rebuild their life when they rethink about who they are. Even CP9 right now, having to raise money and do all these things to get the doctors going. And you've got CP9 out there in the background doing all these. Is CP9 going to stay good? No, God, no, they're CP9. But we're getting to see what happens to them. And a lot of times when Luffy and the Straw Hats leave, the thing that you see on the other side is people making a real life. And we saw Hachi making this life and starting his octopus fritter stand, which, by the way, you're an octopus man.
I mean, he's an octopus man, but any place on Earth that has monkeys as like a regular animal, humans eat monkeys. That's just the thing.
Anyway, it's incredible to me that you had him being this amazing, happy human. And then when he sees Nami, the first thing is he realizes, oh my God, make this up to Nami a bit. Is she going to feel the same way about me? Is it going to fix everything? No. But am I actually going to get an opportunity to make up to Nami some of the bullshit that I put her through? Yeah. And it made me so happy that he didn't just go on with his life and start this whole new world. He also went on with his life and still held on to the debts that he owed, the emotional pain that he created. And because of what Nami has had to go through, I think it's amazing to get to see this time where Hachi can make himself friends, because I've told you before, I think that Luffy and the Straw Hats are going to remake who people are, and they're going to get to have a look at how they've behaved and what they believed in comparison to who they actually are at their core. And it's almost like fighting with Luffy and fighting with the Straw Hats allows people to reinvest in self-awareness. Does that make sense?
I think it does. And I think Hachi is such a goober of a character. He's such an unaware. I could see a lesser author not taking who he is as a person and what he's done seriously, and just having Nami be like, oh, you goofball, I forgive you. But she took forgiveness seriously and thought about it and said things like, you didn't seem as cruel as the rest of them. You just wanted to be accepted by your friends. I understand why you went along with it, and made forgiveness an active choice that she thought about.
Yeah, exactly.
It meant something, and it makes it a lot more meaningful than I think what most authors would be tempted to do, what I expected, which was just, oh, you're just a lovable goof. Who cares about the trauma? It wasn't your fault.
No, I'd be pissed if he did that. I think that Oda really does take the time, and he says, I did these terrible things. And then Nami says, you did. Here's what I noticed about you during the time, but I'm not taking away the fact that you did do these terrible things. Otherwise, it wouldn't mean the same. You'd be like, well, this is just bullshit. Oda cooks like gas is free. Yeah. And so I felt like we came back in Sabaody Archipelago. I felt like it was so similar in some ways, interestingly, to Skypiea. It felt like it had its own kind of weird atmosphere. It had a whole floating verse that was kind of detached. We came sailing up to the edge. It had that same great big root thing going on as the boat came up to it, and the boat was dwarfed by the atmosphere. So I felt there was a really interesting comparison between Skypiea, which is a place of gods, and this archipelago. And I was like, it's kind of a weird juxtaposition between the two. Loved the striped trees. Have seen striped trees like this before. Big fan. I'm in.
The entire archipelago being framed, though, under the framework of Kami being like, this is a place I've dreamed of going but can't, immediately sets you up for one of the themes of the arc, which is the inequalities of the world.
Yeah, I would agree. I think the only reason I didn't want to punch this whole arc in the face, and I kind of still want to punch this full arc in the face, is that I really felt like they had to do this and they had to show us the level of the racism, the level of the corruption, in order for us to feel like there was any need to do complete redesigns. And also you start to think to yourself like about Dragon and stuff and about this idea of revolution, and you understand a lot better like why Dragon feels that revolution is so important, because up until now you're like, revolting against what? Some fictional thing? Does it really matter if there's just like, yeah, there's piracy, but the government's the one who seems to have trouble with it, and you know, screw them, they suck. And so as you're watching this, you're just getting glimpses of why it might not be the best, but then when you come here, you're like, oh, these bastards, this racism.
Yeah, this is the type of thing that would encourage revolutionary action.
Yeah, like I wanted to revolt.
So I need to take a second here because you like to look at the chat and kind of decipher clues from it. You're going to see people talking about resin a lot and be like, what is resin mean something? Genuinely, it's just that when Oda did his list of his favorite panels, one of the top 3 was the panel of explaining the resin and Robin wiping resin on Usopp's pants. And he explained it as just liking it because it adds texture to the world and makes all of the magical things in it feel like they have a grounded system. And because of that, it became a meme for people to read into the resin in really broad way.
Okay. I liked the level of crazy that we got into with the resin and the bubbles, and talking about the ability to fly and carry things, or to be a badass who floats in out of the sky on it. I think all of that shit was absolutely texture building, and I think he's not wrong about that. Like it changes everything. The cars are incredible, but also just being able to put all your packages inside the bubble balloons, and walk away with them was freaking incredible. So like the whole thing. And then just the thing that made this so good is that just when you're getting to a place where you're like, this place is so cool, all of a sudden there's a dude who's like, I'm begging you, please, just, I don't want to die. Give me an axe or a saw. I don't care. And then his entire freaking head blows up. And you're like, what the And I think it was really important because he gives you so little time to be a person who's like, yay, bubble land. Oh, my head just got blown off.
Yeah, normally it takes a little bit longer to see the darkness behind the whimsy of a place we arrive in.
The fact that the celestial dragons somehow feel like they need to wear bubbles on their head so that they're not breathing the same common air as everyone else kind of makes you think like, what's going on and what do they have and what is it that they get to have that other people don't? And is it life preserving? Is it magic giving? Is it like, why are they?
Or are they just that cheap? Because that is an option.
Part of me is like, oh, read in. And then another part of me is like, but also they just suck.
When they're on Marie-Joie, they do dress somehow differently, even though we don't know exactly what that means.
So for me, there's definitely something going on. They clearly have different air because you can see the pressure gauges on their suits in the lower sections. And then they have a bunch of stuff going on in the upper sections. It's clear that there's some kind of blockage, and then their feet come out of the bottom. So they're breathing something differently, whether it's just rarefied air or, I don't know, asshole spirits. So I don't know exactly what it is, but that is definitely something. Do we know if they have longer lives than other people yet?
From what information you have is basically just they are called God, the celestial dragons. They live on Marie-Joie. Slavery is outlawed for most people, but it is an industry that survives.
Mostly because of that,
so the government is able to turn a blind eye. If one of them is attacked, a admiral shows up, which the government headquarters, the military headquarters are pretty near Sabaody, which is why they can show up so quickly. But it is why...
Why are they that important? Is it just because they started the government, they were the original kings of the different lands, What is it that they give? What benefit does the government still gain out of them being at the top? That it is willing to put so many resources into making their life so great.
And Kaido pointed out, I did forget that they are the descendants of the 20 founding families from 800 years ago. The progenitors of the world government.
They were the 20 founding families, and they were also like the beginning of the government.
So yeah, that's what we know about them.
I know also that I hate them, so you're wrong. Yeah, you can ask the same thing about the structure in real life, and that's why I am, because you've got to think that is what Oda is doing.
It feels to me like a statement on the problem with built-in class as a whole. But the issue is like that, I think, is partially the leftist in me wanting a very progressive read. And I have to remember that One Piece is a series where Oda ostensibly has no thematic problem with a bloodline monarchy if the monarch does a good job and cares about their people. The big issue seems to be with the Celestial Dragons, not that they are a ruling class, but that they are a ruling class without responsibility. They are a figurehead ruling class with none of the onus to their people. That is the thematic problem that Oda has with the Celestial Dragons. And I think it's really important to highlight what a big difference it is between someone born into power and responsibility and someone born into power with zero responsibility. Those are very, very different things to Oda, and I would say in real life.
There is a feeling that if your royal family is actually doing something for the group, that you actually want them to have pomp and you want them to have cool crowns and you want them to have mystery, as long as they're also providing something to their community. You want them to both be above you and to be something cool and mysterious and awesome, but at the same time also be providing a value. They're just so happy. So fast too. Like, I think the reason that I loved this arc so much is it was so fast that we met them and that they sucked so bad so quick that you were just like, holy shit, I hate you. I've known you for 2 panels and I hope something drops on you.
All right. Yeah. Let's talk about it.
Shaky the bar owner for a minute.
It's somewhere between an aw and an ah. It's like how hockey's neither hockey nor hacky. It's somewhere in between.
Alrighty. So I loved that she keeps up to date with things, that she has like CP9 levels of knowledge or more, that for me, she seems like the keeper of the keys. And I really love that about her. So I think that she was an incredible character. And it feels good when we meet somebody like this who kicks ass, beats the shit out of people, steals all the information in the world and holds it, and then is immediately on the side of our characters. She's like, I've been following all these other bastards. You've all taken these different routes and you've hit the red line at the same point. So when you hit the red line at the same point, as a reader, you need to say, that has to mean more. Because everybody's log pose changes at different levels. You can't change at the same level at the same time, your log poses, and then you're going to have different battles, different adventures. You're going to make different choices. So the fact that they all went through these different adventures and then somehow end up at the red line all together at the same time feels more intentional. It feels more like overarching something helping to control the timing, because this person just said, because timing is an important theme. Exactly. So for me, when all of the celestial dragons reached the same spot at the same time, including our straw hats, I was like, no, screw that. Yeah. From the very first one that we did, I said timing is important in this.
Literally our first episode, yeah.
In our first episode. So I said, if I know that timing is important and he has all of us meeting at the red line at the same time, that's intentional. So what's taking place here and how are we linked and what's supposed to be happening and what is the overarching guiding principle that is keeping all of us together so that we arrive at the red line at the same time, and why it matters. And then I want to point out that when we leave and we meet the magician Basil Hawkins for the first time, you'll notice that he has those strange eyebrow things. I don't know what to call them.
He's got like, eyebrow diamonds, triangles. Yeah, he's got a deal. He's got something going on.
Eyebrow stretchy things. Yeah. Then when we meet Raleigh, is it Raleigh?
Rayleigh is how I've heard it said.
Rayleigh?
Yeah.
Okay. It's really funny when you're a person who's reading it versus a person who's listening to it. All of the names are going to be so different. Rayleigh's name is based on the Rayleigh scattering, which is a physics concept.
He scatters light, man.
He is literally using the Rayleigh scattering. That's awesome.
That's so good.
What I found really interesting about this is Rayleigh's beard and Basil Hawkins' eyebrows are the exact same thing. It's the same design, same everything. It kind of feels like it speaks to their abilities, to their strengths.
Vibes for sure.
I know that his eyebrows are, they do look like Slipknot. But on the other hand, it's the exact same design that they use on Rayleigh, which makes me be like, okay, because Rayleigh also seems to know like how to get to places to where they're gonna be, not to where they are. The same way he was able to attack somebody with light.
Something I noticed in my first viewing, thinking about how this guy hit light. And yeah, your thought was he's got some sort of predictive ability and is able to predict how he would shift into light to counter it.
It just feels like a future sight kind of piece, that they both share a future sight ability and they both share the same kind of design. I think the dude is going to have some sort of amazing future sight or be able to help control future events or something.
I think we should briefly bring this up. Did you notice what happened? This is rewind. Did you notice what happened? Duval's bull and Luffy. Did you catch that?
His bully water buffalo bull?
Yeah.
No, I mean, I might have, but I don't remember.
Luffy stares at the bull and stops at mid-charge.
Reading it, I said, it feels like it could be a Red Hair Shanks moment, but on the other hand, it also feels like a check your intimidation level. You have rolled a 20.
Just a very successful intimidation check.
It would be hilarious if at all the end of One Piece, he's like, this is actually a whole thing that is just based on a Dungeons and Dragons. Then we go on, we meet Eustace, Captain Kidd, Roar of the Sea, Scratch, Apu, Red Flag, X Drake.
Diaz Drake. It's an interval for 10 and it's Spanish.
It feels extra the way that Prince went extra for a while and was just known as a symbol. Mad Monk, Urouge, Murder Machine Killer, and then Surgeon of Death, Trafalgar Law. She's telling them all about these ones, and as I'm reading them, I was like, no, shut your stupid mouth.
Oh, apparently it's written as Diaz in the kana above the X. Interesting. So X is the Roman numeral, so his name is Diaz Drake. It just gets translated weird for English.
So as she's going through these guys, and she's talking about how some of them have higher bounties than Luffy, which, pardon? How do you get higher bounties than a person who destroyed Enies lobby?
Well, the reasoning is Kid purposefully kills civilians.
Yeah, and so this is my point. When you hear the types of people that we're against and how they all just magically, with all the different fights they get into, the islands that they spend time at, the log pose having to reassign itself a timestamp, all of these different things, they magically just all come together at the same time. It feels like they are being told that there is a thread.
It does feel like the pull of fate.
And that the pull of fate is taking them to their final place, because it was too ridiculous. I was like, shut your mouth. I'm sorry. Especially when she started describing who they were and how strong they were and what they were. I was like, no, you can bite me. It's so cool. Like the amusement park.
I mean, the whole point is that it's cool because that's how you highlight inequality, by having the fishmen not have access to this cool place.
And I understand that I'm just crap. And the little thing that goes above the land looks like, ironically, since the fishermen can't go there, look like octopus tentacles with the little bubbles hanging off of them. And I was like, the thing feels like it is a kind of like a split between being something that would be in underwater world and a amusement park. So it pissed me off. I was so happy for Cammy, even though she ends up getting kidnapped, that she gets to first be in this place. When I first saw St. Charles come into town, or as I like to call him, Snot Drip Looseface. When I first
what was his name again? Snot Drip what? Snot Drip Looseface. I was about to say to his lovers, but I can't follow through on giving that to him.
I'm sorry. Nobody loves him. If you look at him, you'll see what I mean. Like, you gain weight and your face gets fatter. That's whatever. That's just you gaining weight. Your face gets bigger. This dude's face looks like it has been generations since anyone has lifted anything or chewed anything of value or anything. I don't even think his dad loves him. I think his dad is just like, yes, he's a member like me. I love myself. I'm awesome. And therefore I extend my awesomeness to Loose Face. And so when I looked at him, I was like, you have so little muscle in you that your face looks like it's just like droopy, hanging down. The weight of it is too much for your
There is a design philosophy where no matter how baseline physically attractive someone is, the way they act tends to shape their vibe in a way, and how they hold their face in a way that people whose bone structure might be more attractive are still like generally less inviting to look at, and someone whose bone structure might be uglier still invites you in more. And the design philosophy that I think Oda prescribes to is where you lean into that with your character design and exaggerate it, so you can have an ugly person who looks charming and inviting, and an attractive person who looks ugly and off-putting. And I think Oda does a lot of both of these. But this is an ugly person who also looks unappealing and uninviting.
Yeah, this person asked about inbreeding, and I think that there has to be like
You only got
once
20
you get to a
families
certain point of
yeah.
just having pokaroo time with people within only 20 families, that you've got yourself some inbreeding going
Oh,
on.
like 100%. There's no way.
Yeah, and Snot-Nosed
Mhm.
Looseface, who is the grossest thing in the world. When he first comes in, too, Oda did a really, really intelligent thing, because the person who he is riding, St. Charlos the Looseface, looks like Sanji and Zoro in combination. It could be either of them from the view that we have of their naked upper body. So at first, when I first saw it, because Zoro walked off on his own, he thought the boat was in District 1, not 41. I thought he was captured, because when we see him being ridden, it looks so much like him.
It does look like him, yeah.
Yeah.
It
And
doesn't
so
come across that way in the anime, but in the manga, it definitely feels like something that
in the
could be
manga it
mistaken
does,
briefly.
which is genius, because then we see him and we immediately feel like he could be riding in on the back of one of our straw hats, and we're like, get off our hero, you piece of shit. And so it immediately put me into a bigger hatred, even when I quickly discovered it was him. That feeling of it being one of our straw hat immediately put me in the I hate you category. So it was a phenomenal method in my opinion. It was intentional, because it made you hate him so much quicker. Not only is he on the back of someone, but you made it feel like it's a familiar someone, so I hate it more because it feels personal.
I just want to respond to a comment where someone said, not to be party pooper, but I feel like not everything has to be fate or destiny. I do 100% agree. And I am generally someone who doesn't like fate, destiny, prophecies in media. But I'll say, generally, when Oda does something I tend to dislike in other stories, he tends to pull it off better than most stories do. And the other thing is, you can't really pretend fate and destiny aren't themes in this series. Now, it's less blunt than a lot of series where it takes away free will and feels like fate is this unfaltering imposition on the participants in the story. But I think it's always worth considering when something might be fate in One Piece, because it's very, very clearly part of the story. And as much as I have a personal distaste for it most of the time, I think it is a misread of the series to not consider it when things seem especially coincidental. Because we don't really.
Yeah, and I was going to say there's something else more about that, and this person kind of picked up on it, and that was something I was going to say, that Luffy doesn't care about fate and that he's the main character, and that it's fine that Luffy's laissez-faire attitude towards fate is the thing that's supposed to give us some sort of balance to the fact that ton of this is going to be fate related, whether Luffy likes it or not. So Luffy is going to work in a chaotic kind of way around it, but it doesn't mean that fate still exists within the story. And I think that's what gives it that balance, that Luffy becomes almost like it could be too sickening sweet recipe, but you manage to balance it by putting in something that's umami or something that is sour. And that's Luffy. Because he doesn't give a shit about fate and he doesn't give a shit about destiny, but it doesn't mean that the overall story doesn't have that.
Yeah, the vibe I tend to get from Fate in One Piece is that Fate is that there's these pushes of things that could happen, and this force of narrative that has things come together in a way where things are likely to or could resolve in a certain way, but nothing is guaranteed. There are multiple forces of destiny and inherited will pushing people, and anything could happen based off of the choices and efforts of the actors pushed and pulled by fate, but there is still this driving force of fate behind them despite that. Like, it really does feel like both are true.
Yeah, this person said that they personally dislike the idea of fate and destiny, but then they also enjoy it in One Piece, and I would completely agree. I also don't think that it is so in your face. Like, in this moment where everybody arrives at the exact same time, that makes no damn sense unless there's some kind of pulling factor, in my opinion. But at the same time, they don't all talk about it. You all arrived here. That's weird. How did we all arrive here at the same time? That would be playing into this idea of fate or destiny, which would be bullshit and wouldn't be interesting to eat. But instead, if it all just happens and then the reader says, like, that's kind of odd. How come they're all arriving at the same time?
So my take on this is a bit weird, but I think we're far enough that I can say this, that especially at this point of the series, this is something I was already thinking about, so I feel like it's okay. Fate for me in One Piece feels like it is the concept of will, and that this idea of people having this motivation for what they want to see of the world and that being passed down to others and carried on by others is what shapes the world to carry on in a way that fate feels real, which feels really abstract, esoteric, and I don't know, some people might find silly, but I really like it. I really like the idea that fate is this thing shaped by people and what they want to see out of the world. And the people who embody those hopes and that want are carrying on fate, because fate in One Piece, because it's a story that feels almost about what stories mean, people are carrying on the narrative people want to see for the world. And that's so esoteric. And I get if people don't like that reading of it, but that's how I've read it personally.
I kind of enjoy it because it kind of plays into the idea that this person was saying, where they were saying that the characters act so naturally still within this fate. I like that idea because it kind of fits in with yours about the will of D, or the will, or having the will, if you have the inherited will, that you will come to this point. So I kind of like that idea. Okay, moving forward. The person we didn't include in the thing before is Bonnie, because I just found her, and for some reason we didn't say her name.
Jewelry Bonnie the Glutton, added on, or Big Eater. They translate it differently with different translations.
I love that she interrupts the fight. You and I were talking before, and you were saying something that I didn't have privy to, but I noticed within the characters. I don't feel like he often gives airtime to his women characters as much in this way when there's a group like this, but in this case, she got way more polished airtime than the rest of them.
There's a lot of rumors going around, because we don't know the exact details of this, exactly how last minute the supernovas were. And I've heard mixed takes on this, of like, some of them were always planned, some of them were last minute. My read has always been that if any of them were planned, it felt like it had to be Bonnie, because while Bonnie isn't as engaged in the story as a lot of them, she's given a lot more focus on reaction panels. We're meant to show how she feels about things and is watching things in a way we don't really get of the others, to the point that it feels like there's implicit information Oda was trying to give us about her that he didn't really care to give about the others. They all react very vividly and specifically and actively to things happening directly to them, which is how you characterize someone who you don't have a great deal of understanding of their inner life yet. Whereas Bonnie, it feels like we're given a lot of really subtle characterization.
I think that he had her design already, because as I was watching it, I was like, she is a person that Oda is enjoying writing a story for. It feels like the story is written so much around her in the places that she's in it, and that she's actually a change maker in comparison to a lot of the other ones. She stops Zoro, re-emphasizes the fact that they're going to bring the admirals down on them. She's front and center in a ton of the different pages. She has a lot of action where she's making change, and I thought, like, that's awesome. He enjoys drawing her. He enjoys animating her and making her important.
I haven't seen any specific cited quote that one of them in particular was planned.
Yeah, and when I read it, I had a similar read, but I also just felt like this one, I didn't know that they were last minute, but I even said to you, like, I just feel like this one is more important. This person had more time spent on them. He was more interested in doing their plot. I was thinking about what was the point of the Duval thing and the humor and the da-da-da-da-da, but also the setting up the ability for them to come back in later and to become part of the plot again and come in with the flying fish and be helpful. So good that the beautiful man gets to come back in almost immediately and actually be useful in some way. But I love that when he does come back, he's like, yeah, I met all these women, and for some reason they don't immediately bow down and want me, and I'm so confused by that. What's going on?
I thought that's what handsome's supposed to be.
I'm so handsome now. What's up with that? Love that.
Duval needs to learn a lesson that personality matters.
Duval's problem is that I think a lot of time people don't realize that a lot of the attractiveness, like we were talking about earlier, attractiveness does come from the inside as well. And your skin fits different over your face when it comes with an interesting personality.
Absolutely. Duval, I hope he has a chance to work on his personality.
We meet Trafalgar Law and his great good bear. And I'm just
But I do love this biblically accurate Kuma I've drawn.
All the guesswork. You're right. He is my favorite. He is so good.
Okay, so
good.
The English dub hired Matt Mercer, famous for Critical Role, to do Trafalgar Law. Could not have been better cast. He fucking kills it. He is one of the best cool guy voices in the biz, and by God, was it the right casting call to make ultimate cool guy voice Trafalgar Law.
Well, first of all, I can only call him Trafalgar Law. I just can. Second of all, Bethel the Bear is So cool. High five me over it. And he isn't even half naked. That's right, Timu. He's clothed. And we're looking at him for 2 seconds and he turns around and gives the middle finger to his friend. And I was like, oh yeah, Trafalgar Law and I, we're one and the same.
See,
I get you.
This is why you dub people. This is why you anti-dub people, sorry, need to get over yourselves. Because so many of you know there's good talent in the English community, yet I see comments over there. I'm looking right now. I see comments being like, Matt Mercer is Law? Yeah, there's good voice actors who speak English, and they hire them to do jobs.
Yes. What do you mean, of course, the wannabe cool guy is my favorite? Yeah, I was going to say, the wannabe cool is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Because when you look at Trafalgar Law, the reason why he is just epic is he doesn't want to be anything. He is super comfortable being him.
Yeah, he wears
just
leopard
being
print
Trafalgar
hat and
Law,
pants.
sitting beside Beppo the awesome bear, who is just love that bear. Yeah, he doesn't want to be anything. He just wants to be himself. Quite honestly, who was the philosopher who I love, whose name is running away on me right now?
Diogenes the Cynic, right?
Yes, thank you.
If I could be anything in the world, I would be Alexander the Great. If I could not be, I would want to be Diogenes the Cynic.
Then I would want to be Diogenes. And I don't know this because I don't know the community. And a lot of times people's hype and people's hatred of somebody liking themselves and being comfortable in themselves is actually going to create a community where people hate them.
Oh no, most people love Law. It's just people who don't, because
it gives me the same feeling as Zoro, because I feel like a lot of people are super hyped on Zoro, but because of the hype that happens on Zoro, I feel like some people intentionally hate Zoro as an anti-Zoro kind of feeling and try to like other people more because of how much hype he gets. And I feel like that could be a similar thing here, because when I was looking at him, he was giving off Diogenes vibes. I was like, this dude is so confident in just being himself, he wouldn't want to be anyone else. But here's what I'm going to say. I don't give a I do like him. I'm comfortable with it. He's my favorite. And another reason that he's my favorite is his face and his being kind of remind me of Ace. And I love me an Ace. Okay, let me go. I got to cook.
It's cooking time, baby.
So then we go up, we meet Garp, and he's talking about Silver. I'm sorry. Rayleigh is so dumb.
Why?
As a name, it looks like Rowley.
It's Rayleigh.
Rayleigh. All right, whatever. So when they find out that Rayleigh is in there, and he says, "Now's this bad time. Do you want the Navy to take on 2 legends at the same time?" And then I'm like, wait, what's going on? And then I realized, and that's when I realized, and then we all realized together later, like, oh shit, yeah, you're going to intentionally incite a war. You're declaring war. Because if you kill Ace, and Ace is up for execution, then you have definitely incited retribution from Whitebeard. And so why are you trying to incite retribution from Whitebeard? What do you gain by trying to create war with Whitebeard?
When we were on a call, I found it interesting you didn't quite put that last piece together, that it was going to incite Whitebeard, because you did come to the conclusion that Blackbeard would give Ace to the government, partially because you knew he didn't want to invoke retribution from Whitebeard coming after him. The last step there you didn't connect, even though you predicted so far ahead already.
It wasn't about me not predicting it ahead. It was about me obsessing about a different aspect,
which was where Ace would be.
Because I said it before and I'll say it again, and I'm going to say it now. Ace is dying. When I was watching the fight between Blackbeard and everybody, and Blackbeard and Ace, all I was thinking about is he going to capture Ace, and is he going to give them to the government so that he can become one of the 7 warlords? And all I was obsessed with is Ace, 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 Ace. And it was only as I was reading this and he was like, do you want to have a battle on 2 fronts? I was like, oh, yeah, 2 legends at the same time. And then I immediately went, well, then that's war with him, which is why. Why are you having a war?
So a commenter has a really good thought, though, of how could Ace die?
Oh, my God. You know what?
I don't need to finish the thought. I don't need to finish the thought.
I don't know if you've noticed this. Drock is talking more and more these days. He does not need you. He's a mouthpiece as it is already. He's a loudmouth gin.
Everyone knows what I was going to say.
Frickin' worst. Okay, the human option existing is a super important part for us to see for a whole bunch of reasons. It's really important that we see people as being so excited to bid on people and the hype that takes place. The person's name is Disco. He's all dressed up, reminds me a lot of Hunger Games in that there's different rules for people, and this strange hype is like a Hunger Game feeling of selling people and getting to see the price list for all of the different people and how much like devil fruit power users, special mermaids, giants, etc. You start to understand when you see your human prices just how deeply this goes and just how corrupt the society is. We don't get to see selling taking place in other places, but I started to wonder, is there going to be other places in which there's human trafficking, or is this the only place in which you can come and buy somebody, etc., etc.? But I started to think, like, because what is the title of 501? The World Begins to Swell. So the World Begins to Swell felt like this is when we realized, because I thought about it as swelling as in corruption, pestilence, boiling over, the dark and disgusting problems of the world from here swelling throughout. For me, this chapter and the human auction was like, we're about to find out just how corrupt the world is. I think this is tip of the iceberg now. I think I am only just starting to see why we need to have an entire revolution and how deep corruption is expanded. I think it's interesting this person said like could it be like an orchestral swelling? It does feel like a culmination of things. Like, I think that it does feel like, and I don't know if anyone noticed because you didn't notice. So let me just hype on this for a second.
All right.
When you're reading it as deeply as I am, and then you're reading it as quickly as I've been reading it, and then I also have to pause, and I think the pausing is very important.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you're reading it this way, you notice that from about Water 7 to now should just be called crescendo. All of this is like you're coming into a vibrant orchestral music and it's just raising and raising in pitch and hell, and you're getting pulled deeper and deeper into it. The tears, the stories, the pain. We lose somebody. I think we're about to lose somebody else. And it feels like it was his way of you build and you build and you're listening to a song and you're on an adventure, and then suddenly everything is becoming absolutely freaking on fire. Like, up from Water 7 till now, it has been sad and dark. And people were like, well, no, we had Thriller Bark and it was a fun romp. No, it wasn't. A whole bunch of people were like, it's a really fun romp and it's just this and this. And then we just happened to find out about a dude who's alone on a boat putting the skeletons of his crews into coffins and being all by himself and remembering his promise to Laboon and blood. No, it has been dark and sad from Water 7 to here. And he is building and building and building and building. And I think this is the part that's going to be like, boom. And now we're going to be in a different part. Literally, the bubble is going to be popped on this is a sweet manga, and he's bursting that bubble on us right now. And now it's going to have a different feel. And I think that this was the lead up and the crescendo to what's taking place after. In my opinion, as a reader, I felt like I've not only been warned, is there going to be happy points in the future? Of course, nobody would still like it if there wasn't. But I think this was his way of flipping the story from being an adventurous romp with some bad and good things that happen into a now you understand the depth of this world.
Everyone we've met for a while now, whether they've been on our side or not, has been like, you're not ready.
Yeah, I was reading this and thinking about how A, everybody keeps talking about how we're not ready, but B, everybody keeps talking about how we don't understand how big the world is. And then I was like, well, then that makes sense that there's a crescendo going on and we're about to go into another part of the world. And we're not only going to understand how big the world is, but more importantly, we're going to understand now how corrupt and painful the world is. But I never expected, and I think people expect when I said I'm not worried, I think Luffy is going to continue, that this is a shock for me. It isn't. I never said I don't think Luffy will be near death or sucked away or whatever at some point, because Luffy has been in a point where he was going to lose many, many times, and his friends or people around him would save his ass. So I do expect that, and I don't expect that Luffy does everything on his own, and I don't expect that Luffy is going to be the be all and end all. I just think that we're going to come through this, but I definitely feel like Sabaody is the crescendo, and that now the music is going to change up. the tempo is going to be different and the thing that we're watching. So I've now started to look at this pirate romp as being, and you've talked to me before about how kabuki theater, but I think that it's a layering of kabuki theater with opera. And that's what I feel like I'm watching. Now I've realized that he just hid the violence and stuff and gave you this hopeful feeling and this gentle feeling, but it's actually, we're gonna have some really bad go down now.
Can I take it one further?
Yeah.
He's telling us not just are things going to get dark, but that we are following the character who is going to bring that hopeful pirate romp adventure feeling into that darkness and
I would agree.
force it down its throat. And that's what's so exciting about it for me.
I would not only agree, I would say that is, you have to interpret it that way, because that's why panel after panel of cover stories keep showing people who would traditionally be seen as bad and who have done quote unquote bad things have redemption stories within panels, have finding themselves stories, have rediscovery moments. And so it's letting us know that Luffy moving through the world is like the world has a dark shadow over it, and Luffy, here comes the sun. As there's a dark shadow covering the entire world, the sun is moving through to bring light to the dark places. And at the exact same time that is happening, Blackbeard is going to try to feed off of the dark and bring more darkness.
Which brings me to certain lines that I put into this, like those of the D lead a checkered fate, and the fated battle, the narrator says, when Blackbeard fights Ace. We have figures of fate clashing who are trying to drive the world in different directions. Ace has a fruit that embodies light, Blackbeard has a fruit that embodies darkness, and in the exact way that Luffy's running around the world making things brighter, the other biggest protagonist vibe force is Blackbeard, who is a force of utter darkness, just washing over the world with a similar power. And I think it's so cool how directly that gets to be embodied in the Darkness Fruit. And I think we weren't just being lied to with the tone of the earlier story. We were seeing what Luffy was going to bring to the world.
But not only that, he was focusing on how Luffy was bringing things to the world. And we only saw the story around Luffy with little points of darkness and problems outside of it. But now he's like, okay, now you know what Luffy is capable of. Still have faith in the Straw Hats. They're going to need help. They're going to F up. They're going to lose. But at the same time, it's time for you to see how much darkness there is. So Blackbeard's job is easier because it is easier to lean into what's already there. It is easier to exist within the darkness and not be an oppositional force, which is why I think it is super important that Oda has already taught us that Luffy won't think about it. He'll jump out of the boat, get on the island, and be like, this is fantastic. What an adventure. He'll run into it face first. He'll cut himself in the face. That's really important because if Luffy stopped and thought about it for a minute, he might not have the same strength of will to just get things done and to put the effort in it's going to take. It's kind of the way that your dad always talks about the way I take on a project. When I'm like, we should paint this room. And then your dad is like, that's going to take us forever. And I'm like, oh God, no. It takes a minute. Painting is nothing. And then I start it and I'm like, oh, right. You have to wash, you have to fill, you have to sand, you have to tape, you have to do this and this and this. You have to cover all the furniture, you have to move everything away from the walls, you have to take all the plates off. But if I thought about that, I wouldn't do any of it. Because I don't think about it, it's too late. I'm in it. And that's how Luffy feels.
I want to say, and this isn't based off future information, this is a vibe I've always had. And again, it's because it's the character I think the most about. I don't think Blackbeard has it easier. The government is who's leaning into what's established. I don't think he's leaning into the darkness that currently exists. I think he is just as much a force for change as Luffy. It's just not positive change. It's rebuilding a world just as, if not more, dark.
Yeah, I would agree, but people are always able to see the negatives of something. Like if you ask somebody to say 5 positive things about themselves, they're going to be like, oh, and struggle a little bit. Tell me your 5 negative things you hate about yourself. That's usually pretty easy for people. 90 people can tell you how good you look. One person can tell you your pants suck and suddenly you hate wearing those pants. Like it's a strange phenomena. People do lean in. It was the best punch. And so I think that's why I love this, because Luffy is, and this isn't something I've never thought about until just now, but now I like it and I'm going to lean into it. Luffy is igniting the fire in other people. So he's turning on other people's will. It's like his sunshine and his light is giving them that hopeful lit feeling. even if they're still difficult, even if they still have to work hard through it, he is igniting people. Okay, so first we have to do this before we do anything. Cammy is being auctioned off, comes out onto the stage, and this is one of these really, really important moments because everybody has so much faith. Things are going to work out. Don't worry about it. We have money. We're going to buy her. Everything is good. We need to get there in time. Nami is like, quit being a doofus. It doesn't matter. We got this fixed. I have all this money. We have so many berries. And out comes this bag, Snot Nose Loose Face.
Snot Nose Loose Face, that's his name. I remember Saint Snot Nose of the Snot Nose family.
And so Snot Nose Loose Face the third comes out
Mm-hmm.
and immediately takes it up to 500 million berries, way over the amount they have, and purchases her. And that is a super important thing for us to find out because we usually come into situations like that and we'd be like, that's a side plot. Don't worry. We'll get our people and our friends back. We always win our friends. And then he's like, no, you can't buy your way out of this. And then somebody in the crowd, the same way that it always is with the government, draws attention to that and reminds us that, yeah, this government's corruption and power is beyond what you can fight against because he paid 500 million berries, but that was by no means his top. If he'd wanted to, he could have gone way higher. So you lost by an even wider margin than it says there. This is what you're seeing the loss as, but in actuality, his power is infinite. Your money means nothing. He had the ability to bid whatever the hell he wanted to. And that's a really important note to make because it talks about how far beneath them power-wise they are. And it isn't enough just to say, oh, she had 250 million berries. No, the important part of there is to be reminded that, yeah, he beat them doubling their money, but he could have outbid just anything he wanted to.
He just said a number.
He literally just had a number spew out of his face. And that really shows you the level of power that they have. And that's a really important distinction to make at this point in the arc. And now you're like, well, I had no idea how effed we are. And now I can see the level of power. Which is why right after we find that out, and right after we find out how hard this journey is going to be, then Snot Nose Loose Face goes and shoots Sachi, and we're like, what the and so it was super important here that Luffy punched his stupid snotty loose face, because otherwise that despair for us as readers might have been too much. We might have been like, no, man, I can't. I didn't know what we were against. But Luffy hitting him in the face and being like, I don't give a I know you said not to do anything, even if I watched them shoot somebody in front of you. I don't give a shit. I'm Luffy. I'm gonna punch first, think later. And so it was a reminder that Luffy is his own way of doing things. And so because of this, he's just going to walk forward and do the thing we all wish everybody would do. But it also does the most important thing. It reminds us that there is freaking hope, and that Luffy is bringing a ray of hope into everything, because we say to ourselves, okay, power comes from permission. When you take political science, one of the very first things that they will teach you, and one of the most important concepts, is nobody can have power or authority unless other people give them permission to have power and authority over them. And if you are a person who is fighting against power and authority, then they don't have power and authority over you, but they can probably take you out anyways. But if everyone stopped giving their power and authority, it would happen. And so when Luffy punches this piece of shit in the face, he's basically saying, I don't give you permission to have power over me. And that is going to change everything. There is a chapter, and I think it's the next one, where it's called, I think, The Beginning of the Change or something. And I was like, yeah, because the first place that revolutions have to take place are in the minds of the people. You can't win a revolution unless you change minds first. Luffy, by punching him in front of all of these key players who are also super strong and super Luffy-ish, quote unquote, and them seeing this take place, you have all of these different people who are going to take different paths to Laugh Town. And as they're going there, each one of them is going to carry a new revolutionary way of thinking with them. And that's how it changes everything. It isn't just freaking Luffy. It's what he ignites in others. And he ignites that feeling of revolution. He is doing more for the cause than his freaking revolution dad.
Because there's a bunch of powerful people here, up and coming pirates, who have just been shown that you can stand opposed to the world.
That it's a choice.
And
are
people...
you going to choose to give your power, or are you going to choose to take it back?
And cocky people who care about their reputation, like Law and Kid, just got shown up by this guy, this kid in a straw hat who's willing to deck a world noble when nobody else was.
Exactly.
Now,
And so now, because he
yeah.
does that in front of all of them, now they have that same feeling within inside of them. How is that going to grow, and how is that going to change as they put their own perception on that?
People are mentioning that despite how great it was, there were consequences to what we saw. One of the most important things in this, he says, I'm sorry immediately. Like, he knows he had to. He doesn't regret doing it, but he is sorry because he doesn't know if he can endure the hell he has just brought upon them.
Which I also think was really important for what I was just talking about, because when I watch the panels and it shows each one of their faces and they're all like,
Mhm.
and then he looks at them and all of the panels flip back to him, and then he just quietly says, sorry, guys. I was like, okay, so now all the people here see that Luffy recognizes how difficult this is, what kind of a position they've been put in.
Mhm.
And he probably had all of that in the back of his mind somewhere, and yet he still did it. He still went forward. So it isn't that he was unaware. And it was important that he said that out loud, because not all of the people that are in that room were with Luffy when Hachi gave him the thing about don't hit anyone, don't do this. If you see them dragons doing anything, just mind your business. If he hadn't apologized, they wouldn't necessarily know that Luffy understood what he was doing.
I want to highlight something. Deuce, I understand where you're coming from there by saying that you don't think basics of sociopolitics necessarily apply to One Piece because one person can do crazy and destroy an army. But I actually think the themes of One Piece constantly contradict that in a way that it doesn't in most shonen, because numbers matter constantly. Because even though it's a world where we see that one incredibly powerful person could take out an army of mooks, we often see that the one strong person usually has lieutenants, and they usually have sub-commanders, and numbers add up in that compiling way to the point that, like, armies tend to actually matter, even though it is a world where people could fight an army, because weaker guys can team up to help the stronger guy win against another stronger guy, then those stronger guys can team up against a stronger guy. And One Piece shows numbers mattering in that way pretty regularly and talks about numbers and inspiring people mattering. And I think there's a reason why the people in a country are usually involved in their salvation in some way.
The Buster Call throws that right out. I think that one of the reasons that Oda uses the Buster Call in the point that he does is it happens just before all this shit happens, so that we actually have an idea of how, when teamed together, the government has a force of power that's almost unmatched and unchangeable.
Exactly.
And that it would be impossible for Luffy alone to do anything, that he has to change people from the inside and band together with his own people, and it's still going to be ridiculous, because that's what the Buster Call shows us. You can have a strength that's actually unbeatable, because they did not beat people in the Buster Call. They did workarounds to win.
A lot of the captains and vice admirals who showed up couldn't stand a chance against our Straw Hats, but the Straw Hats were eventually going to lose. They were holding their own, but they were going to be overwhelmed at a certain point. Those people were all experienced enough that altogether, the Buster Call was going to be able to pretty easily beat the Straw Hats. They had to escape.
Exactly. And then the consequence for civilians, they killed every freaking person on O'Hara. What else have they killed over the 800 years since they've been in power? And so the government is a strength all by itself, and one individual person doesn't necessarily have the power to overwhelm that. And that's why we do see Luffy and the Straw Hats lose time and time again. And then when they win, there's usually like workaround wins.
There's workaround wins involved, and usually the people have to be involved to an extent helping. Like, people had to help knock over Giant Jack for Luffy to beat Eneru, and people had to help revitalize Luffy for him to beat Arlong. People had to give him meat and revive him for Crocodile. There's always an involvement of other people to the point that numbers in One Piece matter, and I think it's why Mihawk's not a big player in the world. He's just a guy who sails around on his own getting in fights, because he doesn't have that army you'd need to change the world.
I would agree. And I think that's a really important point, that even though he's capable of all this greatness, I keep saying to myself, like, I love Mihawk, don't get me wrong, but Mihawk is not leading, he's not leading a revolution like dragon.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that I keep wondering what Red Hair Shanks and others know about Luffy. Do they know about Luffy's power to ignite hope and change inside of people's hearts? What does Dragon know about Luffy? Does Dragon know the type of person that he has? And that the most important thing that's been said recently is when Kuma talked about his dad and said his friends have absolute respect and how much he instills this feeling of devotion. Thank you, that's the word I'm looking for. Because when he says that, we know that Dragon also has this ability and he creates a devoted following of people, but then Dragon only does it in his own damn circle. And Dragon says earlier, as long as people long for change, da 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 da, and he goes on, but Luffy is the effing change. And Luffy, when he comes through, he helps to give people longing for change in themselves and in the world. Whereas Dragon is like, well, as long as people have it, and Luffy's embodiment is people don't always have it because it's been beaten and oppressed out of them. So what I'm going to do is show them without even thinking about it, because Luffy is not planning it out like a Blackbeard. I'm going to show them what change looks like. I think it's interesting because I think that Luffy could change Dragon and change the way that Dragon sees revolution. And I predict that Luffy is going to change Dragon.
Okay.
And Dragon is going to see revolution differently because of his son.
We have a prediction. I'll say, guys, don't act like people dissing Dragon for not doing enough isn't something this community has been doing since well before where Mama Drak is. We all love dissing Dragon. What's he do? What's he even up to?
That's why we need the Luffy power on the dragon. So Luffy is going to change Dragon, and he's going to change the way that he sees revolution and how he goes about having a revolution. I think he should just dragon things, maybe eat them.
You think Dragon's a dragon?
I told you that. I don't know how many times I got to tell you that. Dragon is dragoning. Somebody said earlier, and it's a really important thing to point out, more reason to hate Don Flamingo, that he owned this slave trade.
Yep.
And then he was like, yeah, I don't want to be responsible for it. It feels like a lot. So you can have it. It kind of speaks to him, you know, the opposite of diversifying, when you realize like, ooh, there's a lot of shit out there on the table and I don't want to be responsible for so many things because I'm going to focus in this area now. So Don Flamingo.
Don Quixote do Flamingo.
Dope Flamingo.
Why'd that get me?
I think he's about to Homer Simpson himself into some very interesting situations. And so
what do you figure his next business venture is?
it could be any bullshit thing since he owned a human trafficking ring. I can't even with that. Bad humans. Rayleigh, when he comes out and everyone just passes out and lays on the ground, I've wanted to meet you, Monkey D. Luffy. And you're like, oh, baby. I stand Rayleigh. That dude is incredible. Not just his strength and his abilities, which are just off the frickin' charts, but come on. I am like, yeah, fangirl moment. I am absolutely enamored with this dude. There is no word great enough for him. He's beyond legend.
He's the Pirate King Zoro.
Yeah, he is the Pirate King Zoro. And then eventually, that will be our Luffy. This new age of pirates thing, as much as I don't want to see it, and it's clearly coming up on our ass now, and we're going to have a better idea of what's going on because all the 7 warlords have been called in by the government. That's why we have the Flamingo head, Dope Flamingo, coming in and pulling in all of his resources, is because he's focusing on this new age of pirating. But I gotta tell you, he's been talking about it for a while. This one I actually feel is one of those times that I'm like, I just kind of want you to spell that, what this new method of pirating is.
Just tell me what your deal is, Doflamingo.
I feel like we're doing the tango, but like it's been 14 days and I'm tired and I need to go pee and I want some food.
Stop pretending that you're austere. You're Birdman.
Exactly. You're bright pink and you stand on one leg. Get your shit together.
Something fun about Doflamingo, by the way, his laugh, instead of being a One Piece laugh where it's funny, is just an evil bad guy laugh.
Thank you. I do that to children all the time. Why do we have to do this and this? And I'm like, because I'm here to make your life hard. And then they're like, what? And then I go, and then they're like, oh. I love that none of our dudes fall asleep when Rayleigh does his hockey on everybody, because it really talks about they are all Luffy level group, and we are actually getting to see what it looks like to have people who are so big and so hype. In my world, I love this idea of like, I'm never going to get to see it and I'm really pissed off about it. I told this thing to you. I want to see their adventures. I want to see each one of their lines that they took. I want to see what their things looked like. It's so upsetting. It's like just getting to live one life. I want to know what the life of each one of these crews is like and what they ran into and what islands they went to. And I'm really glad that we got that Luffy and all the other amazing wannabe Luffys, even though they don't want to be Luffy, got to see each other fight and fight together, because it let them all see, like, you think you're the strongest, biggest, baddest thing there is, and yet take a look at what I'm capable of doing. And immediately, same, Luffy goes about hyping them, and the guy's like, what's with that, Straw Hat? Didn't really end on a high note for you, because he shrinks down to tininess, and he goes, oh yeah, you think? And he just Luffy's it and takes it in a kind of a funny way, but they get to see some of the strengths and weaknesses of each other, but they fight as a unit against the government, because they realize here, no matter what else we are against, we can all agree these guys are shitbags. And because of that, we need to be on the same side. And so rather than it being kind of Blackbeard thing, where Blackbeard would be saying, well, I could fight against these bastards and then I could raise myself up within the government circle and maybe become one of the warlords. Instead, they're all like, yeah, no, we are a team in this way. Even if we get to the end and we meet at the One Piece, right now, we're a team. So
Kuma is back. He's in a picture for the second time. Why is he here? Why am I drawing him? What's he up to?
I wanted to hate Kuma so bad.
I'm aware.
I've decided that, so I have all sorts of different perspectives on it, but I've decided that he's saved everyone. Well, because he eviscerates or evaporates them all, or whatever the hell it is, which, awful. So awful. And then watching Luffy laying on the ground, smashing his face in. But Kuma asks all the time where people would go if they could go on vacation. And so some of the thinking is, does he send them there? But in this case, I think he actually sends all of them to safety. That he knows none of these rat bastards is going to survive on their own. They don't have the ability, although they did a really phenomenal job fighting against Kuma 3 and 4 and all the other Kumas.
They did manage to team up and fight some of the pacifistas.
Which is amazing. But it's really important to note that at one point, Kuma attacks another Kuma. I only have to fight the government if it's actually something that works within, otherwise will work against them or for their favor. He basically was like, I'm a pirate, bitch, kiss my Kuma ass. And then after he says that, he makes them all disappear. And at first I was like, insane, he's eviscerating them. And I love the way that Sanji puts himself in front of danger. Brook puts himself in front of danger. Usopp puts himself in front of danger.
I always, because a lot of people miss this, need to highlight something that someone pointed out to me on their first viewing. How much I love Sanji, of all people, telling Brook to watch after Usopp and Nami when that's normally his job, because him and Brook are the only people who know that Zoro can't fight right now, and he doesn't want to ruin his pride, and trusts Brook to watch after the people he wants to protect because he needs to save his brother.
Sanji protecting his brother, exactly. When people pit them against, Oda wrote two people who are so the same and yet so different.
But guys, people are complaining about it. Oda asks you to do this. There is a common trend where there will be two characters you are asked to compare, and he does it by having them talk about fighting and who's stronger. Every time he does this, they will be 1 centimeter apart in height. Mihawk and Shanks are 1 centimeter apart in height. Zoro and Sanji are 1 centimeter apart in height. It's common. He wants you to compare them.
Yeah, so Kuma basically tells the government, bite my ass, I can do what I want. I'm Kuma the bear. I love that his paws tell him apart, but you wouldn't necessarily know unless he had hands facing out. So how do we know now? Why do I think that Kuma is holding the Bible? Well, I think Kuma is holding the Bible because it's what lets some people know who the Kuma, the original, is. And it's almost like he lets himself know who the original is. You know what I mean? Like, it's a constant reminder to him that they may build other things like me. I have faith and I have a worry of afterlife and all these other things, whereas these things are just copies. They're not a real man. And so when he's holding this Bible, I think it's both kind of a way that we can see who the real Kuma is, but it's also a way that he feels his humanity. But I don't think the Bible is Christian. So somebody asked, how Christian do I think he is? I think he's 0% Christian. I don't think Jesus walks on this earth. And so he has a deep relationship with it because I think he feels deeply connected to something that he feels gives him the gift of humanity and the reminder of humanity. I think if you were a person who was being turned cyborg and they were making copies of you and you were having to say things like, sometimes you say things you don't want to say and you have to do the script they want you to do, even though you don't necessarily agree. I think that your Bible would become a thing that you would be like, yeah, man, this is the thing that makes me feel connected to my humanity, and I feel like I owe it, and I feel grateful for. So when we're getting to a really, really important point, which we had little conversations about, we didn't get captured. Roger turned himself in, a part of me, to show off their power. The government reported it as if they captured him. The Pirate King turned himself in. We knew that our travels were ending. 4 years before the day of his execution, Roger was afflicted with a terminal illness, which means, so many good things come from this. Like, it's like Roger gets to cook time. Something that your Nana said that I will never forget is that she said she thought cancer was a kind way to die. And I thought that was crazy. She said, yeah, but I have cancer. I didn't die of a heart attack. And so I have time to put my affairs in order. I have time for all my goodbyes. I have a time. She was saying I have time to leave the way that I want to leave and feel like I wrapped things up, which I'd never, ever looked at it that way before. I'd always looked at cancer as just being an asshole that I hated and wanted to raid the machine against. When she said that, it made me realize that sometimes mature people, and your Nana was like the last known grown up on the planet, she was the last adult, really have a way of looking at things and saying, this gives me a beautiful amount of time to fix all my ends and feel like I'm leaving the world in the best way I can at this point of where I'm at. And so if you're Roger and you find out you're dying of a terminal illness and you have all this information, you've got the One Piece, you're hiding it, you've put it in this place, you have time now to determine, what is it going to look like when I go out? How can I make the greatest change? What is this thing I've been fighting against? What is the best way to make sure that everybody comes to it and fights for this thing I think is so important? And I think because of that, when Roger turns himself in, he gets to leave the world in the exact manner that he wants to, as publicly as he can, so that everybody can hear him talk about the One Piece, can hear all the information, and then boom, it spreads like wild. It's like making something go viral. He took death the way that your Nana talked about death, and it immediately kicks in the first stage of his plan. Like, Rayleigh now is sitting there and staring at Luffy and the others, and not only is he helping out and they're finding out all this information, I kept thinking about how for Rayleigh this must have felt so good,
because this is Roger's plan. Roger wanted to
Exactly.
inspire someone just like Luffy. And he sees Luffy come in, and he sees the exact person who walked up to him and offered him a role on his crew. And he knows that his captain lives on. And that's it. So easy to think about if Luffy becomes the Pirate King and dies and talks about wanting to change the world and how he hopes that adventure lives on. You could imagine Zoro in the same situation, meeting someone who reminded him so much of the captain he chose to give everything for. And that's what Rayleigh is getting right now.
Exactly. And so it's just, that's the part that made me cry the most in here, was watching Rayleigh and thinking, like,
damn it.
What does it feel like to feel like you are getting to see the fruition of the love that you had for this person? And he believes in it, and he believed in Roger's cause. Now, I love, like, of course, Usopp is gonna ask, hey, can you tell me about the One Piece? And of course, Luffy is gonna be like, shut your damn mouth, don't tell me about the One Piece. I don't want to be disturbed with that kind of knowledge. And so I absolutely love that Usopp asks about it, because I love that it gives us a moment to have Luffy be like, no, don't tell me, because it was the exact same thing. It's the exact same thing as Robin saying, okay, yeah, I don't want to know about the 100 years missing, because he's telling her, you might change your interpretation. But not only that, as you're going on your adventures, as you're making changes, you're going to make different decisions if you already know, and you're just going to look for biased confirmation of the same and you're way too smart for that. So we want you to go out in the world and see if you come to the same conclusions, and see if you believe it in the same way, and see if it's very valuable and what you would do about it. And that's the exact same thing that takes place when Usopp says, what about the One Piece? Is it blah, blah, blah? And he goes, and then Luffy's like, shut up, because it's the exact same thing. And I started to imagine, like, the journey to the One Piece is where you also maybe find out how valuable the One Piece is. You maybe don't understand its value unless you fought your freaking way there, unless you saw certain things, unless you talked to certain people, unless you connected certain points around the world. And it would take way too long. You also have to kind of this earning feel, like you need to earn your way there so that you understand its value and so you feel its value. That was so special. But I just want to bring your attention, because I'm not done being sad,
Okay.
to
I'm ready to cry again.
this
Primed and ready.
page where Raleigh is talking, and it's so you. Like it's so damn what you say about Roger all the time.
Uh-huh.
Turned himself in, and on that day, young pirates who are now famous all lined up to watch, or that's what I heard. The entire world was watching as that pirate was being executed. I didn't go. These were his last these were his last words. I won't die, partner. The world government and the Navy were probably surprised. Though the public execution was intended to serve as an example of how pirates would be punished, that single statement by Roger right before his death caused the beginning of the great age of pirates instead.
Every
But
one of the
I
pirates
won't
sailing
die.
right now is Roger's will. Every person sailing the sea in defiance of the world government, going out to
Is
find
the
treasure.
will of Roger.
All of the young pirates, every supernova who showed up, all 11 of them are Roger's
Everything.
will manifest.
It's Roger's will, and Rayleigh is getting to see it. He's getting to stand there and think about what it feels like to be standing in Roger's will, to be standing and looking and feeling and watching and thinking like, God damn it, you didn't die, partner. You really didn't die.
Oh,
It's just so wonderful, and I was so happy for them. I was just like, I am in love with this moment of your friendship, and thank you for highlighting your
to
friendship
have
for
Roger
us.
be right and to see that his captain's will does live on.
Exactly.
Ah.
Exactly. He says, I'm sure the ones at the town square that day got something very special from Roger. A person you know very well. Shanks was one of them. Oh, you know Shanks? And then it goes on, and then it shows Shanks. Mr. Rayleigh, I was so surprised. In the East Blue, there's a kid saying the exact same thing as Captain Roger. The very same words
Oh.
said.
And now you see why Shanks immediately meant so much to Luffy, because it's his captain.
It's his captain.
Ah.
It's so crushing.
It's so sweet, though. It's beautiful.
For me, I think that was a way sadder part, because I really feel like Kuma, I still think is on our side. And I think that what he did here, after the Straw Hats had all these huge fights with all of his doppelgangers, and after the government forces him to be a certain way and he feels compelled to do that, and I feel like they have something over on Kuma. Like, I think about the way that Frankie had to be rebuilt because of his injuries, and I wonder if it's possible that Kuma had to be rebuilt in some way, and while they were rebuilding him, they built him to be their war machine, and part of their way of doing it was like, yeah, we'll save you, but will require something of you.
I think that's a cool idea, them having something over him, and that's why he's, in theory, the obedient warlord.
Yeah, and so he is super into them. Plus, he has this feeling of religion that helps to give him his humanity when he's built so much. So much of him is now actually cyborg that he feels a need to be obedient to the things that he believes. And one of them is probably loyalty in his religion and other things. So it makes me feel like there is a deeper humanity within him, this person, Kuma the Terminator. And yeah, it is kind of like the Terminator. Oh, it is kind of Terminator.
Somebody just said, have there been any thoughts on Kizaru? It's wild that we haven't talked about my man Borsalino, that's his real name, Kizaru's a code name, yet, because on our phone call, we talked about him more than anything.
Oh, that's all we talked about. We just went off for that. Like, we talked about that for so long, actually.
Yeah.
That is interesting.
The good news is both of us think Kizaru is cool and his entrance is awesome. The bad news is that everyone probably is going to hate us for. We both kind of think he's more interesting than Aokiji.
Yeah, I 100% think think he's more interesting. I also think he is the love child of a couple of different actors. Does anyone know what he's supposed to represent?
There's a Japanese actor that he's based off of directly,
That's
like a
what you
famous
said.
Japanese actor. Yeah.
Yeah, and yet that's not what I think. When he came down, I was like, who is old ass Justin Timberlake? And yes, and Adam Sandler had a baby. It's a Tim Sandler. It's a
Just Tim Sandler's kind of fun.
Yeah.
I mean, I can tell you it's a very specific Japanese actor.
Anyway, the thing about Kizaru that's so much cooler than any of the other admirals is everything.
On the theory that they're each based off of a type of office worker, this is the checked out guy. The guy who's been turned into a drone by the job and is just kind of drifting through doing whatever, not really engaged.
I see him as a different guy.
Yeah.
So yes and no. I now was thinking about this tendency that we talk about all the time in different businesses. He feels like the fail upward guy.
Okay.
You maybe go too far with it and you
so like the dumbass who's competent enough and lucky enough that just keeps moving up.
Yeah, and he keeps being like, oh, I'm just gonna blow this whole thing up, and then everyone is like, wait, no, like that's a lot, and he's like, too late, I already did it, and then people are like, oh, that was successful, feel free to move up, here's a new position for you.
I definitely have the vibe of he was a hardworking dude who's just had to do so much that he's just checked out and he's like, this is my 9 to 5. I'm here to do a government, I guess.
I think people are like, wasn't that Spanman? No, Spanman is a different kind of fail up.
Spanman's
He's just
nepotism.
a failure and he has nepotism. So he can do whatever he wants and people are just going to keep moving him up the chart.
His motto is unclear justice. Yeah.
I know people who mess up bad, but the way they mess up ends up being successful. And then people are like, promotion.
I also genuinely think riding it on a cannonball might be the coolest entrance in the entire fucking series. Like, I struggle to think of a better entrance.
It's possible that it's literally one of the coolest things ever.
Mihawk sailed in on a coffin, and somehow it's nowhere near what Kizaru manages.
Can I just say, though, can we take a moment to enjoy the fact that one of the dudes has an entire army inside of his body?
It's so cool. Capone's power is so fucking rad.
Oh my god, the horses come running out, there's people inside of his eyes.
And just think about how threatening it is that this dude can point at you and a cannonball flies out of his hand because there's a fucking cannon in him. It's so badass. If you're not named Monkey D. Luffy, that's gonna hurt.
Truly, to be the type of person whose body is filled with your own army, so you're still a general, they're not in control of you, you're controlling them, and you can just make them do whatever you want, and you carry them with you everywhere.
All of them have such sick powers. Bonnie can change people's ages at will. Kid has Magneto powers. Uroge just gets stronger and stronger the more you hit him. So what the do you do? Do you stop hitting him? Do you just try to knock him out at once? Diaz Drake turns into a dinosaur. Whatever. I mean, look, that should be really cool, but it just compared to I have an army in my body. I have magical tarot cards that read the future. I can use battle music to cut off a guy's head, and someone in my crew lets me run literally on air, and my crew is called the On Air Pirates. That's too good of a bit. That's so good. Like, compared to all that, turning into a dinosaur seems kind of mid, doesn't it?
It really does.
He's not a T-Rex, he's an Allosaurus. It's a very important difference.
Battle chance of defeat 100%, flee chance of success 12%, defend avoidance rate 76%. Captain, do you have a minute? I'm looking for a man called Sentamaru. And I was just like, I love all of them in this scene.
Law's power. In this scene, he switches men's heads with cannonball. He cuts people in half at a distance. The shit that Law does is bewildering in this scene. Like, how do you begin to place it?
It's absolutely ridiculous. I love the wing dude. I loved how many wing dudes we have. We didn't see his wings. You don't really see them from the back. And
that's Mad Monk Uroge, who I mentioned. Yeah. We can tell by the wing shape is a Birkin. And there was a theory in the community immediately when we saw him, because he's a monk and a Birkin, that he was the last priest of Eneru who wasn't there. No, I love that take. I love it when people do things that are interesting to me. Let's go to this part because it's important to me. They do all the great good fighting. They fight against all the doppelgangers of the great big bear, Kuma, and you're like, god damn, they're actually doing very well. The Sentamaru, though, is what is
Is it Sentamaru?
Sentamaru.
I just put the wrong emphasis on the wrong syllable.
Who knows? Maybe you're right, but I don't know. I've heard Sentamaru.
No, the way that I said it was so goddamn awkward. There's no way I'm right. When they come down, I thought they were a they them.
Not a lot of they thems in the series. We do get trans representation. Gender fluid, yes. They them, not that I can think of. They them is not the thing that he is.
Names in
though.
Japanese are both female and male.
Yes. I think gender non-binary, but not they them pronouns specifically. But is there a Japanese equivalent? I don't even know that.
Their ability to defend is wild. What an interesting thing to have a person whose whole key is defense mode. Boom. The best offense is a great defense. Yes. Way to put it into action. That's just freaking cool. I like that Luffy told them all to run here, that he understood that they were just outmatched, outplayed.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, we can't. They've all realized now by watching that Zoro is not in his strongest. They all had to come together and use all their strength to take down the other Kami. And so they're sitting there and thinking like, he's like, no, dude, we've got to run. And so when Luffy says run, you're like, holy shit. You know things are bad when Luffy is recognizing how bad they are and that it's time to run. Because I don't recall it.
Aokiji, he tells his crew to run away, but he doesn't.
But he doesn't. Yeah.
Yes.
And in this one, he's saying we all need to run. And so I was like, yeah, that's terrifying. And now I see that in a whole different level. Oh, and then watching Chopper go into the realm that he hates, where he hates himself and he doesn't know who he is and becomes Monster Chopper because he just needs to save his friends so badly. And then you sent me the stupid thing and all the bubbles pop up but just as I was freaking out, I remembered that the chapter title of 513 is Beyond Rescue. Beyond Rescue for me can be taken, you could take it in a couple of ways. You could say to yourself, they are beyond rescue, they're too far gone, you can't save them anymore, they're beyond that, That's one interpretation. I think that what it's actually saying is he knew that they were not going to save themselves. And so instead, he has put them into the beyond as a rescue. I actually wasn't freaking out about him getting rid of them because I just really feel like he's on our side, and this is a really great way of showing it.
The reason this hurts me so much isn't because I think that the Straw Hats are dead or anything. It's that Luffy
No, me either. It's Luffy.
Yeah.
It's Luffy's reaction.
Luffy thinks they're dead.
Watching Luffy watch them go away. And then, I mean, come on. Luffy's on the ground and he's watching the crew become eviscerated. And nobody knows what happens to them when this goes on. And as far as he's concerned, they've been like dematerialized. He just has to watch it happen one thing after another. It reminded me of a very specific moment that I hate with my whole heart.
Does it involve Pearl?
Pardon?
Does it involve Pearl?
Did you just say Pearl? No, it reminded me of the Never-Ending Story, the little boy trying to convince his horse Arcteryx not to sink into the swamp, leaning his hand out and saying, "You've got to fight." And the horse kept sinking into the swamp of sadness. Soul crushing isn't even the word for it. Absolutely devastated my childhood. And that's what this moment reminded me of. This is like watching like 8 different people get the Arcteryx treatment in the Never-Ending Story into the swamp of doom. I was just like, are you kidding me? And then Luffy says, I couldn't save any of them. That is also a Never-Ending Story thing. You got to remember that freaking Oda is my generation.
Yep.
And Never-Ending Story was the most hateful thing ever. And in it, there is a big giant who's a rock monster. And he says, I couldn't save any of them. In these big hands, they're so big. And yet they couldn't hold on to any of them. The nothing took them all. So that is literally a line from the Never-Ending Story. I couldn't save any of them. What a rat bastard. And then the dude goes, so you're just gonna blast him, eh? You better explain what's going on. This is a real problem, you know. And Rayleigh sits there with the dots. Kuma leans forward and says, we'll never see each other again. Farewell. Grove 12, Sabaody Archipelago, the Grand Line. That day, the Straw Hat Pirates, led by Captain Monkey D. Luffy, were eradicated. I felt like when that occurred, it was almost like a fake death moment because people don't know, even in his cruise and stuff, don't know where that goes. They don't know where his paw thing takes them to. And so for me, I thought it's almost like he gave them a fake death. And he gave them the ability to escape because they were beyond saving. So he's like, well, I'm going to send you into the beyond and save you all together. But when he said, I'm never going to see you again, farewell, I was like, why? Why are you never going to see me?
Isn't that ominous? What does that mean?
Yeah, because then it felt like they were dying. But then I said to myself, okay, maybe he's going to stay away from Luffy and his gang. He feels like he's done everything he can, that he is on one side. He's not on another side. He's supposed to be a government person. So he did everything that he can. But if he follows them around saving their frickin' ass all the time, eventually somebody's going to ask a question. So he has to separate himself from them. And it would be questionable for him if he could do his job if he was around them. So he wants to keep himself away from them. But then I think he's going to eventually have to see them again.
What do you think happened to the crew?
So on first reading, you might think that they just go to that idea, where would you go if you were going on vacation?
Mm-hmm.
Then you start to think, is he sending them to a particular place where they can meet up together? I know they're going to get back to their boat. Did he send them all to their boat?
Their boat's on this island.
Exactly. Are they in the in-between place? Are they in that place that you can make doors to go through? And they're trapped within it? Well, not the dimension, but the dimension opens itself into what we call the dimension. But is there a dimension in between? Because when he says, they're beyond blah, 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 I see beyond as being a place. So it's help, and it's called the beyond.
All right. So you think they're in another dimension called the beyond?
No.
No?
And then I was like, maybe he would send their asses down to the fishland, being like, let's just send you down there. It's not just going to send them back to the... Okay, before we get into that, can I just say, here's the thing we're not talking about. Meanwhile, Ace is up for execution. I can't even with this story. I've thought about the idea of them being in multiple places and having to find each other. But then I wonder, like, even if they're in multiple places and having to find each other, they could still all be in a different dimension and different places within the dimension. So I think that, in my opinion, like, if they were all inside of the, for lack of a better word, the dimension, they could be in different spots within there. Or he could have sent them all to different islands in the archipelago, or he could have sent them backwards. What would I do if I was trying to save somebody? What would I do?
What a good question.
Remember, there is air and space in the One Piece. Yeah, people are trying to keep asking me if they're in the moon. I hope they're not. He didn't send them to the goddamn moon, did he?
Kaido, what are you doing? Why is Kaido counting? Oh, plug! We're being counted in for the plug!
This plug is brought to you by the long game. Okay, people, here we go. 1, there it is. Hi, YouTube. It's me, Mama Drop. I'm here on the tube of you. I'm here to tell you, subscribe. You have everything to gain and nothing to lose. What does it matter if you subscribe? Is it going to change your shoe size? No. Your hair color? No. Your soul? Maybe. You don't know. There's no proof. But who cares? Subscribe. It's a good time. If we get to 50,000, that kid over there, Drock, is going to turn into the pineapple face of Marco. If we get to, somebody told me it was 250,000. I thought it was 150,000. I'm going to put my face on live and be a me. Woohoo! Me. But more importantly, I hope you had a good time here. Press like if you liked it, and join our Discord and come and chat with us. That's all I have to say to you. Goodbye. Here's my second YouTube plug. Here it goes. Hey, YouTube, subscribe, press like. Bye. Now you could choose which one to use.
All right, before we do favorite top 5 characters, let's rank the supernovas. Your list of the supernovas other than Luffy and Zoro in order. So we already know number 1 is Law. You said so earlier.
I love Law. Number 2 is the Glutton, Jewelry Bonnie.
Those 2 would have been my first 2 also. Just swap them. Bonnie first, Law second.
Bonnie is second for me. Bizarrely,
I find everybody tends to have one they can't explain, where they're like, I can't really defend it, but they're great.
Exactly. So I have no explanation for why I like the Magician Basil Hawkins. I think that's my third. Spoiler alert, Captain Kidd is not high up for me.
I feel the same way. I feel like I should like him, and I've never actually liked him at all.
Yeah, I want to like him, and I keep watching him and trying to like him. I don't.
My one that I can't explain is definitely Scratchman Apu. No defense.
And then I'm going to go back up to Capone.
Capone, beige.
I think that he is wicked cool. And then I really love me a Red Flag Drake.
Diaz Drake.
I'm gonna put him under the scratch, though. I don't understand the Murder Machine Killer very well.
He's basically Kid Zoro. He's the only other not captain other than Zoro to make it into the supernovas by bounty.
And I just don't.
You know what might make you like Killer slightly more?
What?
His laugh is a joke because Kid generally has a punk rock theme.
Yeah.
You know the song Psycho Killer, the line
fa fa
fa? Yeah, because of Psycho Killer.
Yeah.
That's points, right?
Yep, that's points.
That's points.
You say Psycho Killer, and I'm there. I'm going to move him up a spot.
By our editor that apparently beige is not beige, it's Capone Beige, which is Italian. Oh, beige, like pesci, beige. Capone gang beige.
Law, Bonnie, Hawkins, Beige, Apo, Drake, Killer, Arouge, Kid. Yeah, that's my list.
Arouge is one who I don't know where to rank because I think he's cool, but I'm also like, who would I put him above? I want to like Drake because dinosaurs are cool, but I think everyone else who is a devil fruit has a more neat power.
I like the Mad Monk. I think that he's a really cool dude, and I love the idea that he was the missing one. That's kind of neat. Love the wings. Oh, there's something about a monk. I love fighting as monks. Like whenever I play a game, I love a monk. It is time for Straw Hat Top 5.
Can we do something special this time?
What?
I want to have a special spot on its own list, the list of one worst character of the arc. I think there's a character so contemptible they deserve a special mention.
Okay. Are you talking about Snot Nose Loose Face?
That is who I'm talking about. I think there's a necessary special mention of worst character of the arc for the first time.
No, if we're gonna do this, then there's gonna be a worst character of the arc from now on.
Fine, let's go.
Whoever is doing editing, don't call it Top 5 brought to you by Luffy. It's brought to you by Mama Drock and Luffy.
Okay. It's a collaborative effort.
Also, Mama Drock and Luffy are sitting on bubbles now. That's how I see this. Okay, here we go. Top 5 brought to you by Mama Drock and Luffy. Luffy and Mama Drock. I don't care the order. You do you.
Yeah.
But
that
Luffy.
punchy title.
Okay. Maluffy. Mama. You know what? No. Number 1. No.
No.
Mama Monkey. I like that.
Is number 1 no?
I had to say no because otherwise it would have been a total freaking Nami moment.
You'd have to dethrone them later.
Mama D. Luffy. Done. That's our title. Top 5 brought to you by Mama D. Luffy. Here we go. Kuma, number 1.
Oh, interesting.
I think he's the GOAT in this case. If he's doing what I think he's doing and saving the Straw Hat crew, which I think he is, then he is the GOAT and he's number 1. Okay, number 2? No. Number 4? Yes. No. Number 2? Yes. Am I really gonna do this? Rayleigh.
I get it. No, I really get it. He brings so much to the story.
I'm hoping my number 3 is gonna be a Straw Hat, but
hey, sometimes it's not.
It's not looking good. Number 5?
No, you're not gonna keep her there. What does she do?
Don't even worry about it. Number 5, Sanji.
Okay, yeah, fair.
I think this is a really big moment for Sanji because he totally moves against just himself in a whole new way. He's just all about protecting his brother, all about pulling together for the crew. He moves around his compulsory need to protect women. And he sees the shape that his brother is in and realizes, no, I'm gonna need to be the one to stand up here. And I think this was such a huge change for Sanji. And it is a Sanji redemption. And he needed it. Like, he bad needed it. I'm going to make number 4. So it's going to be a tie then between Shaki and Hachi. And like, they're very different reasons, but they both give me that number 4 level of engagement. It's a hard one for me. Number 3 is, it's an Admiral.
Fair, honestly. The man is rad. He adds so much threat and menace and just has such an air about him.
I hate doing it, Straw Hats, but it is. It just
sometimes
is.
It's not the Straw Hat's art.
Which means we have one freaking Straw Hat on this time. That's crazy.
So real quick, where is Luffy on the tier list of Luffys?
Oh, Luffy is S tier.
Goes out of his way to do good, even if it's very costly.
When Luffy punches the snot-nosed loose face in his dumb, smug little mouth, and oh god, I was so proud of Luffy, even though I was like, Luffy, you have effed the crap out of this. But I was here for it.
Guys, this was such a blast. I want you to know, Mama Drock, I entirely forgot how depressing this string of chapters is.
When you read it this way, it's very sad. Do you know what the wave is made out of?
What's the wave made out of? Is it tears?
Tears. You know whose tears they are? That's my tears. Did you say to yourself one day, there's a lot of things I like about my mom, but to punish her, I'm going to make her read One Piece because I know how much she falls in love with her characters.
No, I said I'm going to make you read One Piece because I think no series has affected me more deeply and I want you to experience it.
I should have understood that affect me more deeply meant rattled your
Look,
soul.
I think it has affected me positively more than any other series. It's spelled Arc with an H because it's short for Archipelago.
Oh, you are the cheekiest cheeker in Cheekville.
Thanks for being on this journey with me.
Come and join the Discord. Come and hang out with us.
By the way, I wasn't feeling this art for a while. I felt like it wasn't coming together. I'm really loving where it's at now.
No, it's amazing.
That was so much fun. All right, bye everybody. It's been lovely talking to you. I have been asked to show you this picture comparing out. So this is the actor and Kizaru side by side, just so you can see how uncanny the likeness is.
Holy shit on Rick. Okay, but look at that picture. Tell me that dude doesn't have a grandson whose name is Justin Timberlake.
And the second grandson named Adam Sandler.
But honestly, nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome.